All right, everybody. I think we're going to get things started here. If I don't start things pretty quick, Holly's going to get mad at me, and I don't want that to happen. Welcome to our Marjorie Lynn Bank lecture series. I'm John Racanelli. I think of myself as the big fish, but my staff thinks of me as the fish head. Either way, I'm the leader of this organization, and I adhere to my favorite principle about leadership, which goes something like this. Where are they? Have you seen them? I must find them, for I am their leader. It is actually a great honor to be the CEO of the National Aquarium, and at this time when so many exciting things are happening here at the Aquarium. And I want to thank you all for your support and your attention and your ability to endure my introductions to these great speakers. For those of you that haven't been to in fact, I'm going to do a quick survey here. Let's see. Let's ask. I'm curious where people are from. Who's here from Baltimore City? All right, that's pretty good. How about Baltimore County? All right. How about Howard? Pretty well represented. Where else? Monroe? Anne Arundel. That was coming there. Anybody here from Cleveland? We have got a group. This is, I think, they're going to get the traveled farthest to come to the lecture award, is our group from Cleveland. See? Pardon? That's pretty darn good. Saudi Arabia. Look. The reputation of this series is going far and wide. And it should, because it began 2 decades ago when the Bank family endowed this series in memory of Marjorie Lynn Bank herself. She was a photojournalist, diver, explorer, a Baltimorean, and a person with a great passion and respect for the ocean and its inhabitants. And it's been in her honor that we have this remarkable, wonderful series. And I always thank the Bank family, and I always thank Penny. And I saw her tonight. I know you're out there, Penny. Thank you. Thank you so much. We kicked off this series in February with oceanographer and explorer Sylvia Earle. We followed that with National Geographic photojournalist Brian Scarry, who's done some pretty scary stuff. And then photographer, filmmaker extraordinaire Bob Talbot, who did that beautiful video that we have out in our lobby. And today we have the privilege of welcoming another great innovator and defender of our oceans in a very unique way. Before we do introduce him, though, I want to thank our partner in this program and our partners, but first and foremost, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation and its chief, Jason Patlis, who's here with his son, Ben. How you doing, Jason? Hey, Ben. Welcome, buddy. Ben's going, Dad, I didn't know you were going to do that. And of course, our Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, who are our partners in this program and who have teamed up with us to produce a series that emphasizes the importance of protected areas, what our friend Sylvia Earle calls hope spots for a blue planet. I'd also like to mention we have a couple board members in the audience. Our longtime board member and fan and friend, Jane Dropen, and her husband Larry are here, and also Chuck Rogers somewhere. I saw him earlier. Chuck, you're out there. Bravo. And finally, and most importantly, our own committed members and generous donors and our volunteers who make all this work possible. If you're not currently a member of the Aquarium, I hope you'll consider the idea of joining our family. It's an opportunity to be part of something big and do something that helps future generations. It's also a great way to get involved. And if you are personally involved in trying to help improve the Chesapeake Bay, the Inner Harbor, and the ocean beyond, please keep doing us. And connect with us. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. Come out and join us on a cleanup. All of the above. Make a donation. All of that is a way that we can all affect positive change worldwide. While we're here, I want to call out another person because it's very relevant to what Ed's going to talk about tonight. We have had an animal rescue program since 1991. In that time, we've successfully rescued, treated, and returned to the wild over 100 animals, from seals to sea turtles, dolphins, whales, and manatees. Yes, whales. And our manager of that program, Jen Dittmar, is here. Jen, I think I saw you way up in the top right. Give him a wave. This last winter, Jen took in 19 more charges, 13 of whom headed off to Florida recently. The turtles, a couple more are still here healing up. She also had one harbor seal with a suspected shark bite injury. Every one of them has a unique story, and really releasing them back into the wild and into their habitat they came from is really one of the best rewards for the kind of work we do. That moves me to our guest today, and he's going to share his passion. He shares the passion we have, which he has taken to a grand scale for animal rescue in this incredibly active role he plays in protecting and defending this blue planet. And that's specifically helping great whales get out of entanglements. And he has participated in 70 large whale entanglements, disentanglements. And you know, I said this to a couple of you out there before we started tonight. I wish that frankly, as much as I've enjoyed getting to meet Ed and hear about his work, I wish that he didn't have this reason to come here and speak to us. And if he does his work as well as as I think he can, and if we collectively can do more about the causal factors that cause these entanglements, hopefully he won't have a slideshow to show us in another 10 or 20 years. It's a tall order. Ed's going to tell us exactly what it's like to do something as complex and dangerous as rescuing a whale from, at times, up to thousands of feet of fishing gear and other entanglements. And while managing the response efforts around the Hawaiian Islands, he's also accumulated some pretty cool stories. He's also garnered a lot of very useful information that can help reduce the risk of entanglement for whales all over the world. And I think he's one of those people that is really working like we are to change the way the world views the ocean and hopefully move that to a better place than it's currently at. We'll take about 20 minutes. He's going to talk to you for about 20 minutes here and show us some slides. And then we're going to sit down together and we're going to answer some of the questions that you've asked. And if you have a question that comes to mind during the lecture, please hold on to it. We have some folks who can pass out some cards. And then eventually at the end of the night, we're going to pass around the mic. So with that, will you please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Ed Lyman.
Thank you, John, and aloha, everyone. We have a Hawaii theme tonight, a little bit. You know, well, John, actually, when you said entanglement response or entanglement, you were right, because I do want to tell you about large whale entanglement response, not disentanglement, because it is not just about going out there and freeing large whales from life-threatening entanglements. It's gaining information. It's the science behind this that is so critical. That's what's going to solve the problem, not cutting whales free. I'm going to throw a little teaser up here, a little video clip. Give you an idea, but we're going to go into just how do we cut a large whale free, 45 feet long, 40 tons weight. It's going to be a little different than what Jen has to do here. I got a great tour today, by the way, and you guys are doing great work here, so thank you for that. But it's a little bit different in trying to control the environment here and the animals and safety versus out there on the open ocean. So I want to do that, but I also want to give you some background on the bigger picture, because that's just part of it. What we do at the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary, along with NOAA Fisheries in Hawaii, cutting these animals free, is just part of the story. It's much broader than that. It goes beyond Hawaii. It's worldwide. So let me just give you some background first, and we'll get into large whales again. But I wanted to say it's a global threat involving many species of animals. They're going to let me have a longer leash here, which I appreciate very much. It involves the sea turtles as well. Turtle we cut free a couple months ago. Here's a herring gull. So sometimes it's the marine birds. This is a six-pack holder. So it's not always fishing gear. It was one of the messages I wanted to give you, is sometimes it's not fishing gear. It could be terrestrial trash, okay? And then sometimes, immediate threats they can drown in the gear. This is a stellar sea lion, going to take you to Alaska. It's radial tire around the neck. And then a harbor seal, come back here to the northeast, wrapped up in gill net there. And we'll move on back to Hawaii. So I'm trying to give you a sense how broad this is. That's a spinner dolphin, a Hawaiian spinner dolphin with some monofilament, a line wrapped around its tail. And then back to the east coast here, that's Atlantic white-sided dolphin wrapped up in gill net. And the other message point I wanted to give you is sometimes for these smaller marine animals, the impact is more immediate. They, a lot of times, are constrained in the gear enough that they can't get back to the surface to get that next breath of air. If you're not Johnny on the spot, You're not much we can do in that regard. Fishermen might be the first disentanglers in many ways because they haul the gear and there's the animal. And they don't want to catch it. They may be trying to get it out and save the whale and save the gear, by the way. So, but it can impact the larger whales as well. This is a humpback whale off of Wrangell, Alaska that was complex enough entanglement, gill net there, that it did drown in the gear. And there's been estimates of just the impact here. Andrew Reed and others came up with an estimate of 308,000 whales. That's large whales as well as the dolphins and the porpoises per year worldwide falling victim. And that's a conservative estimate, but that's some of the science. That's not just someone just throwing a number out there. They did their homework. So there is the impacts. Some of those impacts, again, for the larger whales, maybe not so immediate. Now there's these population impacts, and I wanted to give you one example. This is close to home, right out here in the Atlantic, the North Atlantic right whale. Here, the impacts of entanglement are such that it's probably preventing the population from recovering or slowing it down greatly. There's probably just a little over 400 animals, we think, now in the North Atlantic. They're on the brink of extinction. I think you have a speaker coming up, David Wiley, who will likely talk about the right whale and the impacts not only of entanglement, but ship strike on these animals. And he's working with the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. And Gray's Reef National Marine Sanctuary also works with these animals and protecting the animal and its environment. So that's, by the way, we tried to cut this whale free. This is 1998 when I was working back here on the East Coast. And we got the latter two wraps off, but that forward one we could never get off. And eventually it did succumb and washed up dead in Cape May, New Jersey. So not too far from here. So we don't win them all. Here we're going to jump to Hawaii. I've got a yearling humpback whale. There's mother below it. We'll go off to the left. Okay, the yearling is entangled there. For humpback whales, population-wise, the impact is there, no doubt, but they are still recovering. The numbers are increasing, so it's not so much overtly decreasing the population or anything like that. I just want to point out that let's say that's a calf, and mother's entangled. There's that impact as well. Mother maybe not fit enough to take care of the calf, or mothers are not healthy enough to produce as much as or as often as they normally would. For humpback whales, every 2 to 3 years, but we see with entangled whales, it might be every 3 to 5 years. There's impacts to the population level. But not all of it is population level. There could be impacts to the individuals as well. I know some of these images, sorry, they are negative, but it brings out the message points I want to give. There's some happy endings coming up here and later in the talk. But there's physical trauma here of lines cutting into the flesh, which can result in other concerns, issues, threats, like a systemic infection, for instance. This is a female humpback whale. This is back in 2007. We were able to cut her free of this gear. Hundreds of feet of line trailing. This is not an albino humpback whale or a sperm whale. It is a compromised humpback whale. It's dragging gear behind it. It's very light-colored, has a rough skin to it. These are all indicators, by the way, that we have an animal compromised and likely entangled. So I'm giving you also some of the imagery here is what we use to assess the animals. I know assessment's important wherever you're at. And then here's the big impact for these large whales. Again, it's typically not immediate, this threat. They get entangled, they carry the gear. A lot of these whales can have a strategy of not feeding for months at a time. Humpback whales do this when they head to the wintering grounds. Okay? But beyond a couple months, it starts to impact them, and you start to get very thin whales. That's not how a humpback whale is supposed to look. You're not supposed to see the backbone, the scapula, the shoulder blade of a whale. It's supposed to be big and round and plump, live off those reserves. Okay. Well, I want to start making our way to Hawaii, and I'm going to jump to the West Coast and give you some numbers there as well. In the last 10 years, over 240 large whales have been reported along the coast of California, Oregon, and Washington, entangled gear. About 87% of those have been humpback whales, so a majority of them are humpback whales. A lot of factors there. They're growing in numbers. We like humpback whales. Whale watch boats tend to focus on humpback whales. They're the acrobats of the whale world. But nonetheless, it is a species that we're getting a lot of reports on. The other thing I should point out is we realize we are not finding all these animals. Okay, they are big needles. Grant you 45 feet, 40 tons, but that's a big haystack out there, these oceans. So we know we don't get them all, and there's some indication of this. Out of some effort here on the East Coast showed that for every one animal we found dead, large whale, 9 others were likely falling victim to the entanglement. Okay, so there's one indicator. I wanted to show this as a current event. This is out Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. I believe Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary is going to get involved tomorrow because 2 weeks ago, a little less I think, There was a humpback whale reported in Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Then the next day, there was another one reported. Yesterday, a third was reported. So they've got 3 current cases they're working on the West Coast. This is the one. They got 300 feet of line on this animal, got the crab pot off of it, but there's still the wraps around the tail. And I'll show you later. We tag them if we can't finish the job. We'll put a tag on them. We attach it to the entangling gear. So this whale's is tagged, and we've been tracking it. And before the lecture, I looked it up, and it's just coming around the bend off of Santa Barbara. So hopefully in that area, the Channel Islands is right there. The Channel Island National Marine Sanctuary will lend a hand. They're going to use their boat, get the team out there, and hopefully cut that whale free. Tomorrow is the weather window, so look up on the news and see if they get our whale free. So that's part of the team. Okay, and I went backwards, didn't I? My fault, hitting the wrong button. Okay, there's one other means I have of letting you know this is measuring the magnitude of the threat, and that is scar studies. Researchers going out there, maybe tour boats, and looking at these animals and finding out that a lot of them have scars on their body. We're talking percentages of 30 to 70, 75% in some cases, these populations. A lot of the whales are getting entangled. We're finding out it's pervasive. If you go anywhere you look, you find scarred whales from line entanglements. I'm showing you this one because you can actually see that's a 3-strand line about 3/4 inch in diameter. You can actually see the marks of where the line was on that skin of this adult female humpback whale. So it also tells us, by the way, that a lot of whales get out of the gear on their own, because this is what's missing. It doesn't tell us who fell victim. It tells us who threw the gear on their own and is now just scarred from the impact or from the entanglement. Okay, going to get to Hawaii. Even in paradise, these humpback whales that call Hawaii their wintering grounds, most of the humpback whales, by the way, in the North Pacific, so very important habitat. It's the reason why the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary was established to protect those animals and their environment. We've done very well. The numbers, we're talking over 10,000 humpback whales now in that population alone, so good numbers. But they still get entangled. Local gear, as well as gear from afar. This is a humpback whale. Took a picture of this a couple years ago, carrying gear from Alaska. I'm going to say more about that in a moment. The numbers there, by the way, we've been working there since 2002. Dave Matilla and I started a network effort there, pulling the resources, and it's been about 140 reports, and it's over 88 different humpback whales have been reported entangled. We'll get into how many we've cut free soon. Okay, I mentioned wintering grounds. This is where, for the North Pacific, a majority of the humpback whales are coming down, mothers giving birth to their young, about a 1-ton calf, by the way, or approaching it. Nurse that calf with very rich milk. Calf grows very quickly. And that's an issue here if a calf gets entangled, growing into the gear. Have a couple little stories there for you. But that's one part of what they're doing. And of course, the males, they follow the females. And here we have what we call a competitive group. There's a female out in front there, and all these males are kind of chasing after, competing with each other for the right to be really chosen. She'll still make the choice, but they're hoping to show off. And things like this bubble stream, that's what the primary male, primary escort, we call them, will do. It's kind of the equivalent of us kind of flexing the muscles a little bit, so whale equivalent. So, okay. And so what allows them to do this? Because in the winter grounds, they don't feed for the most part. They're fasting for a couple months at a time. Is their size. So here we got this migration, and they're going 2,000 plus nautical miles, spend a month or so down there. Some of the males will stay 3 months. I mean, it's incredible what they pull off. And what allows them to do this is their size. They can carry the reserves with them, and that same size, is my segue, is what allows us to cut the whales free. It buys us, or buys them time, and it buys us time. So I think I have one of our humpback whales dragging gear, and I will give you a hint here. That gear, since it has some numbers on the buoy there, been able to track it down. That gear came from Alaska. So I'll give you some more imagery and some more stories on that, but they can carry this gear thousands and thousands of miles, carry it for years at a time. And again, they'll eventually succumb, and it's a slow way to go. So that definitely on the animal welfare side as well as population concerns, it's there. So. But you can see, trying to gain access to the animal. It's unfortunately not like Jen and all the great personnel she has and the equipment she has, and able to control her environment here. Control the animal for the safety of the animal, control the environment for the safety of the people. It's not so easy out in the open ocean to do that. So here's really, here we are, right on top of a whale. This is not good. This is not the right way of doing it, you know. Sorry. Because what if? You got to deal with the what if scenario. What if that whale suddenly flicked its tail? And I will tell you, there was a guy in New Zealand who had cut 2 humpback whales free. He was jumping in the water to do it. He'd don his scuba tank. He was pretty good at it. He got 2 free. But the third one did not attack him. It had a little response. It startled response, really. And it flicked its tail and hit the poor guy in the head. He saw it coming. Unfortunately, there was a whole whale watching this because they had stood by to keep the needle in the haystack. Don't lose the whale when the rescue guy comes. One thing we don't do is we don't jump in the water. So, and it is risky, and we have our protocols and everything that we follow. Overall, NOAA Fisheries, the Office of Protected Resources, is the overseer of this. They have a permit. They provide the authorizations. We follow that. So there's David Matilla. I wanted to point out David as well. I forgot to mention Stormy Mayo, but these are the pioneers. David and Charles Stormy Mayo are the pioneers of the large whale entanglement response. I'm like one of their first apprentices. So, and then Coast Guard help. There's a lot of people that are playing their part here in doing this. It's not just one person by any means. The whales themselves, when we go to cut them free, they don't necessarily know we're there to help them. They're not the gentle giants. We always tell people, don't get pulled in. Don't get a sense that they know what you're going to do. Be prepared for anything like this, a breach, as we call it. That can happen. There's an entanglement there. It's around the forward of the pectoral flippers. So, and Bob Talbot showed this in his presentation several weeks ago, right, John? He had this. He didn't say anything about it, but I wanted to mention Bob is part of the West Coast response team out of Monterey Bay with a sanctuary there, and he's helped us on a number of occasions. I've worked with Bob. This is a gray whale that predates our involvement together, but I wanted to point out that Bob was in the water to take this picture. Very important work to do, assessment. How's the whale entangled? How might we get it free? But dangerous because Bob did get caught in this net for a while, and it was kind of scary for a moment. So, yep. So back to your boat-based work. So here's where I want to give you a little video clip. I'm going to use helmet cams and pole cams, and I'm going to put you in the boat with us, remember, boat-based, and tell you how we go about cutting a large whale free. Okay. Oh, here's how we do it. It's the old Moby Dick movie, Gregory Peck version. And this is it. I mean, we're going to use old whaling technique. We're just going to modify it a bit. They're harpooning a whale they're harpooning a whale not to kill it, but to attach to it. Those harpoons don't go deep enough to kill a whale. So they're getting their Nantucket sleigh ride, okay? Once that whale slows down, stops, stays at the surface, they're going to lance it. It's just a long knife that drives into the vitals, bleeds the whale out. That's how they were killing the whale. They always missed that in the Moby Dick movies, right? You always thought the harpoons were killing the whales. Not until you had grenade-tipped harpoons were those killing the whales. So we're going to use that technique because we want access to the animal. We want to assess the animal. We want some control of that 40-ton environment, so to speak. But we're not going to throw harpoons. Okay, don't worry, Ben. Okay. So we're gonna modify this a bit. We're going to use grapples because we've got an entangled whale. We can grapple into that gear. We're going to get an Nantucket sleigh ride. We're going to use knives instead of a lance to kill it. And so this is a juvenile we had just last season, so I thought I'd pick a recent one. It's wrapped around the tail, dragging hundreds of feet of gear behind it. Ended up being local pot gear or trap gear from Hawaii. And so here we are pacing the animal. You don't see the animal yet. This is some of the difficult part. There's the tool, the grapple in the upper left-hand corner. And we're just pacing. Haircut, it's up at the surface. Throw the grapple. This is helmet cam footage, by the way. So you're right in that inflatable boat. And there's a buoy just went over the side of the boat. That's got a tag on it. You might see it again here. Clearing all this line. All clear. Good, we're clear. I guess you don't see it, but it's back there. Green buoy. It's got a transmitter package on it. What if the whale got away from us? What if it took a swing at us? What if it made the wind line? You know, weather's pretty good in Hawaii, but still, you have some rough waters here and there. Okay, next video clip. Because likely the whale went down. Okay, they like to do that to get away from you. When it resurfaced, first we got a Nantucket sleigh ride, just like the whalers, except it's not a wooden skiff, it's an inflatable boat. And it's amazing that you can tow behind a whale at 5 knots by just bending it over the rubber of the inflatable and holding your position. Do not have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger here. Like just about everyone here could do that part. Okay. Okay. Okay, we're letting go. We don't want to wear ourselves out. I think you heard us talking about that. Okay, whale comes back to the surface, and you can see some of our buoys. Those are buoys we put on. These are our barrels. I might have neglected to say this, but the technique is called kegging. Yeah, sorry. So they're adding barrels to the whale to slow it down and add drag and buoyancy. Those are our kegging buoys. We just added another one. Typically, 3 buoys will slow down a humpback whale and keep it to surface. So we're using that modified kegging technique. Oh, let's see, just in time. I have another. Not 3 barrels. I love this clip. I had to do it. So Universal Studios. Not with 3 barrels. But my message point here is that you got to be methodical. This might take half a day or more to pull. Maybe you don't get it done in one day, but very slow, methodical. And you don't just throw 3 buoys or barrels on the whale at one time. You go very slowly. Oh, by the way, that look, very typical. They're always different. You know, they're not the same. So, you know. Okay, we'll mosey on. But eventually, the whale slows down, stays the surface. That's a cut right there. There was one cut that quickly. Okay, I'm going to show you another cut because there's 2 more lines on that whale we got to get. So I'm going to switch from a pole cam footage back to the support boat to show you the next cut. So we've pulled up behind the whale. Whale's not diving. There's the 2 lines.
There's 1 line.
Good.
There's the 3rd line. Yeah.
Yep. And that's it. I oversimplified.
Nice job, guys. Happy boy waited for you to do
Okay, so he had about 2 feet of line in one of the wounds, but the veterinarians tell us that will expel, that the body will encapsulate and over time, like a splinter in the finger kind of thing. They actually tell us if it's too deep, don't pull it out because you could do more damage in pulling out a deep line, and just trim around if you can. Okay. Our accomplishments to date, since David Mattila and I started this effort, and the sanctuary really leading the effort there, the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale Sanctuary, working with NOAA Fisheries, with David Schofield. I don't know if any of you know him from, he used to work here at the Baltimore Aquarium. David and I work side by side. But the sanctuary's taken this lead role on the front of entanglement response. We've had 140 responses, 20 animals so far cut free from life-threatening entanglements, 19 of those humpback whales. We had a sei whale, very oceanic whale. I think it's the first sei whale that's been cut free. 40% success for those we can respond to. A lot of those sort of unsuccessful ones are the needle in the haystack. We get out there and the tour boat or whomever was standing by goes, I was watching it, but it got away from me. Very common, the needle in the haystack. More than 8,000 feet of line removed. I did Google Earth. That's 10 times the breadth of the inner harbor here, back and forth. That's a lot of line off these animals. And 43 sets of gear that we recovered, removed, that we've been identified. That's an important number. That's as important as the top number there because that's the information, and that's what I want to go into next. Just give you some of the information. Gathering that information, and this is where John was right. It's entanglement response, not disentanglement. The response is entanglement, learning about it. So some more, I take one moment. I have some bullets here because this is so important because now, hopefully I've given you this background. Here's all our goals. We do want to release some animals from life-threatening entanglements, save some, but we know we can't save them all. We want to provide experienced, appropriate people with the right tools and with the qualifications and authorizations to do this type of work because the safety side, I didn't realize it, but the Sanctuary Program is doing a big public service, safety service. It really are. Increase awareness, that's what the sanctuaries are, that's their mainstay. They're really great at this. We're doing that, and we're gathering the information towards prevention. So, okay, there's some obstacles here, got to point these out. It's just that same size, how big they are, and the open ocean, all that, it's not easy. The relatively rare events, I told you that. We rely heavily on opportunistic reporting. We're not sending out dedicated platforms to look for entangled whales. We wait for a tour boat to find one for us, things like that. Reports of entanglements removed in time and space. You know that dolphin, when it comes up in the net, well, that's where it got entangled. When you find a whale entangled in a net or a piece of net, that net could have come from a different country, it could have come from a different coastline. You have problems connecting the dots. It starts to get pretty difficult. I'll give you some examples. There's difficulties in identifying the gear. It could be just a piece of line at the end of the day. That's it. That's all you can say. And there's a lot at stake. It can be very emotional for the fishermen. They don't want to catch whales. The managers are trying to protect the animals, the sanctuary program. It's something that can really pull on the heartstrings as well. We have to address that. And so here's what I really wanted to get at with all that is Hawaii and the Humpback Whale Sanctuary there, shortened it up for you, is just a perfect environment to do this type of work. I mean, you've got, clear, blue, calm waters. It's safer to do this type of work. And for assessment, clear water makes a lot of sense. We see not just the tip of the iceberg, we see the whole iceberg. We see everything and figure out more how to cut it free and what's going on, how the animal got entangled. We get a lot of assistance. I opened up with aloha. There is a lot of aloha in Hawaii. The tour boats are our mainstay. They're the ones that find the whales. They're totally organizing themselves now. I don't even have to get on the radio and ask for help. I get on the radio, I'm listening, and they're going, okay, I'll take the whale for the first 30 minutes. Ocean Discovery, can you take it for the next 30 minutes? And I got to get back in it. And so-and-so, can you take it for the next 30 minutes? And I'm like, going, holy crap, they're organizing themselves. And that is really cool. And so I really have to give them credit for that. It's a team effort. Yep. Yep. And then there's increasing the scope of the effort. This is like the only effort where, for humpback whales, where we're looking at a winter grounds. And in science, the answers you get are based on the questions you ask. We're asking different questions. We're gaining different information. We know a lot more. It's a broader issue, obviously, and increased awareness and education. So this is where, the sanctuary, they do a lot of this already. It was perfect. And with David Matilda, there's David right there, and myself, you had the experience level, so we worked very closely. In a unique situation, we took like a co-lead or a lead on this effort, whereas normally sanctuaries would not take a lead in the actual entanglement response effort. So unique in that regard. So some of the things we've learned, I can't give you a lot here, but I want to give you a couple, okay? And that is things like, what is the gear? And it's everything out in the water column. But it tends to be fixed gear. And fixed gear is gear you set and you leave. Okay, so it could be a mooring that you put your boat on at night, or it could be fishing gear like pot gear. Pot gear is trap gear, by the way. I always make that mistake. I should be using more common terms. But trap, like fish trap, lobster trap, crab trap, things like that. Okay, long line, you guys know it's a long line with hooks on it every once in a while. That's mooring and aquaculture gear. So you see a variety, even marine debris, and but a lot of it's pot gear. In Hawaii, we've had local pot gear. I think I got a picture here. This calf entangled in local crab pot gear. I have a mom out in front. And with the local pot gear, we get a lot of juveniles. It makes me wonder, are they playing with the gear? We think they are. Okay, it's clear water, especially during the day. You'd see the gear if you weren't too deep. And so maybe playing with the gear. And humpback whales are not deep divers, by the way. But even gear from Alaska, I'll give you some examples here. I mean, heavy on the adults, by the way, and I think what's happening here is this gear is big stuff. And only the adults are able to carry it down 2,000 plus nautical miles. The longest one we have is kind of a tie. Pribilof Islands is actually probably up there a little higher on us, but they're west of the Pribilofs, 2,500 nautical miles, straight line distance. Wrangell, Alaska ends up being pretty much about the same. That was shrimp pot gear. Unimak Pass, Aleutians, those are just some examples of these whales carrying at long distances. And some of those traps, 700 pounds. They're not carrying the whole trap down, but those are big traps. Those are the, if you watch Deadliest Catch, that's the same thing. Those tanner crab and king crab pots or traps. Marine debris. I want to give you an example. This whale we cut free in 2005 was marine debris, 22 different line types. Okay, I've kind of given you who as far as different species and the impacts to them, but how about who as far as ages? And it tends to be a lot of the juveniles. We have in Hawaii, it's high on the juveniles, subadults. That's much higher proportion you'd see in the population. We're starting to get more and more calves, by the way, but calves are pretty young. They kind of stay close to mom, stay out of harm's way. But we've had a couple recently. So, and that's what I wanted to do for you is give you some more examples of us cutting some whales free at the end here. Get back to those helmet cams, the pole cams, and show you a couple more of our rescues and focus on saving some of the young animals. This whale here was the first one we saved in Hawaii back in 2003. David and I, it was a yearling with its mother. So, by the way, these yearlings do not like to stop. That's why they're still with mom, stay in the nest. Here's back in 2009. This is our first example. Juvenile yearling, humpback whale, line through the mouth, back to a knot on its back, and about 200 feet each strand, so about 400 feet total of line trailing behind it. Okay, this is going to be a video of the grapple throw using our grab grapple. There's the whale to our port side, left side. Going to throw.
Go for throw.
Okay.
That's in there.
Pretty simple when you think about it.
Okay,
You're just
on.
throwing. It's
Okay, we're in.
not quite so easy when you're on a boat and everything's moving.
Clear this. Paul.
You might see the transmitter
No.
package
Yep.
go overboard. There goes.
Okay. Okay.
And keep it tight, and there it goes. You might see it right there. Yep.
That's as tight as I can go.
Yep, that whale's running pretty good. That was a good 5 or 6 knots. So we're going to let that go. We actually had to be patient for like 4 days because weather and the whale ran offshore. But 4 days later, with the help of the Coast Guard, there they are, support boat. There's a male escort kind of chuffing up next to us. So we got to watch for the other whales, got to watch for tiger sharks that are trailing, hoping for the meal to come in a couple days or weeks. So we're getting our Nantucket sleigh ride. And this whale never really stopped or slowed down that much. So we actually did make our move after about 4 hours. There's our kegging buoys behind it. So I think it was like about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we thought we did something different. The whale kept coming up, and we just had this hook knife on the end of a pole that would come off the pole.
Good job.
And we reached out and just kept measuring it. As the whale came to the surface, we'd say, oh, too short. Let's put it out a little further. And one time, the whale came right up, and the loop met the knife. So here's some, I think the next clip will show that, from the support boat, the Coast Guard boat, it's a sailboard mast that's kind of rigged, and there's a flying knife. There it is on the lower right corner, and there it is, in. Kind of hard to see here, I know. But the knife is on that loop. Yep. And then you got to clear that pole, and the green line on the right side of the boat has the knife. The yellow line on the port side of the boat, left side, which David Schofield is holding on to. So let's look at some helmet cam footage. We'll show you the same thing. Here's the same thing happening. On. The knife is on. Okay, David Schofield's on the left side of the boat. I'm on the right. We're clearing the pole. Keep that line tight in my hands. And I almost hit David in the head.
Ease out, Dave. Schofield, easy. Just
There was a little confusion here. There were 2 Davids in the boat. And I'm going, David, do this, David, do that. So you're seeing some of that confusion. But that line in my hands on the right-hand side of the boat has the knife. And so let's go to the next clip, because what I'm going to do is still image. There's the knife right there, right where we want it, right to the right of the knot on that part of the line. It cut in about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we pulled hard on this side. We actually used sea anchors, big funnel-like devices, to pull it out of the whale's mouth, and the whale was entirely free. So that was good. So we're using our tools. Wanted to show you this one. Last year, we had a calf entangled, and there was nothing trailing, nothing to get a hold of. Okay, so things were different here. This is a totally different entanglement. And we had a protective mom, you had a couple male escorts, and that didn't want us to get near the calf. So we had a hard time, and we never actually got a knife on the animal. But this year, we had the same thing happen. We had another calf. Same thing, forward of the flippers, very tight wrap, and growing into it every day. It was, you could see the line sinking deeper and deeper, and we wanted to respond. The tour boats were finding it for us, and one day they found it, and we made a new knife, and we used that new knife. Our knives are hooked, and they're sharp on the inside, but dull on the outside. Well, we said, we've got to have a knife that's sharp on the outside as well. We're going to have to cut our way into this line, or to get to the line. So we made a little nick on the whale. Not too bad. I think we did pretty well. But here's some footage. And what's happening, we use behaviors as well. We have a mom still to deal with. Well, moms like the rest. It's what they do. They've just given birth, and they're nursing. They rest sometimes at depth. But the calves can't hold their breath as long. So the calf's up to the surface, I believe, has just gone down. There goes the calf back down. We didn't get close enough that time, but there goes the calf back down to mom. Going to rest under its chin. Calves are kind of like not very coordinated yet, and they're a little buoyant. You know, they're drinking that fat, that 50% milk fat, you know, and they're kind of plump, growing into the line. So that time we didn't make it. And there's the knife on the upper right-hand corner, by the way. Just kind of sharpened up a bamboo knife and adapted it to our pole system. And so this time, this next clip, we got close enough. And missed it the first time. It's Lanai in the background, the island Lanai. Oh, just missed it, going down. Did a little response there, but it comes back up, coming up. And right there's the cut. Yep, that's it. Well, you know, I did the same thing. I wasn't sure. I wasn't positive. The captain had a better perspective than me, and he goes, I saw a line just flick off. The line literally just exploded so fast that I never even saw it. It was so tight under such tension that I missed it. But there's more imagery here. This is the shot that they took from the helm station. You can see where the knife is being placed, okay? And then the shot afterwards, there it is. Looks different, doesn't it? So, and with digital cameras, we can look right away. You run into the cabin, put a towel over your head, you know, look. And nice and clean, no line now. A little nick, we did pretty well, I thought. And then I have an image. Christmas Day, a couple weeks later, there is what we've nicknamed Ringer, or Hula. And we saw this whale like a dozen times up to about January 11th, then no longer saw it, but probably they went to Alaska to feed. Very good. So we're very proud of that one, very happy. And again, it shows the uniqueness of all this and the differences. I have one more to show you. On Christmas Day, a couple years ago, we got a report from the tour boats about a shipstruck whale. They said, Ed, it's swimming with its pectoral flippers, and the tail's got this nasty wound, and it won't even move it. So we think it's been hit by a boat. So we respond. The sanctuary does more than just entanglement response, by the way. We monitor the animals, everything from ship strikes to disease and things like that, and research. But we responded, put a camera in the water like Bob Talbot, and lo and behold, there was an anchor hanging below the tailstock there. Lots of dark line that no one could see. The whale watch boats in Hawaii, you have to stay 100 yards away. So they never saw all this. So we switched gears and went into disentanglement mode or entanglement response. And here's the grapple throw to get a hold of that animal. It did start using its tail, by the way, as you're going to see. There it goes. Doing I call those chin breaches on the East Coast. In the Pacific, they call them head slaps. And so we got a hold of the whale. You can see we're on it because the helmet is, you're holding on and your head's kind of moving. Yep. So I think I removed some of the audio on this one. This was a tough one. Yep. Yep. But eventually that whale slowed down enough and stopped diving. The key is stop diving. I don't mind them moving a little bit, but here we are trying to get at that anchor. We have one more cut. We had made 2 already, and we're down to our last cut. Sun is starting to set. David's to my right, and there it is, right there, I think. And this guy just swam off hard.
Are you clear?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And David's pulling up the gear, and
totally
there's
free.
the sunset there. So another happy ending, and again, 20 animals so far. So I have a couple bullet points here, but I mean, this is just a sample of what we're learning and the accomplishments. But we are seeing that it's a lot of juveniles and calves. If you go up to Alaska, it tends to be more calves that are becoming entangled. Differences of capability towards carrying the gear. I didn't get into this, but some of the bit about heavy gear being carried by adults, lighter gear, maybe juveniles. I didn't say this, but gillnet. We're not seeing gillnet in Hawaii yet. You have gillnet entanglements in Alaska. We think gillnet entanglements can be fatal, and they never make it to Hawaii maybe. So our response efforts increasing the effort. We know that. We're learning more every day. Slow process, got to be patient. The full extent of the impact, we're still trying to figure it out. And we're cutting some large whales free and making progress towards saving, we hope, many more in the future. And that's another rescue we had this season, throwing basically a cutting grapple towards cutting a whale free. So lots of people to acknowledge, by the way. Many of them are here, the National Marine Sanctuary Program, Sanctuary Foundation, NOAA Fisheries, Coast Guard helps out a lot. I mean, and the list goes on right down to, in the bottom, you start getting into the fishers, the tour boat operators. It's really a community-based effort. Everyone pitches in, and I'm certainly appreciative of it. And thank you guys. Mahalo is thank you in Hawaii, and thank you for having me tonight.
Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes here, and just a quick introduction here, and then we'll get going with asking Ed some questions. Fascinating stuff. Great video. If you have a question written on a card that you were not able to turn in before we got started here, please pass it all the way to your right, that away, and they'll scoop it up, and they'll come by to collect that. Ed's agreed to spend a little time, a little conversation, and answer some questions, and if we have time this evening, we'll open up the floor to even more of your questions. The first one I want to start off with, which I think is kind of starting from the macro view and coming home. What would you say is the biggest benefit of the National Marine Sanctuaries and other marine protected areas in your view?
Boy, one thing, John, that I've noticed is it's getting people involved.
Yeah.
It's that everything from just educational and outreach, the awareness, things like for us, the ocean count. I travel around, even on the mainland. I get people come up to me at the TSA agents at the airports will say, I'm involved in ocean count. It's where we get people involved in monitoring the animals. A little bit of citizen science. That's just an example. It's whether it's a beach cleanup, it's everything. It's the docents, the volunteers, which are so important to us. It's that involvement and then making what normally could be an inaccessible area accessible to folks. It really is. I'm always amazed. I mean, what I'm doing tonight is an example of that too, and being able to come here and speak and letting people know about our entanglement response program. So they're the catalyst in a sense in that regard. I see them doing so much in that regard. And getting people to work together would be another thing that the sanctuaries are known for is that catalyst of cooperative research or response, whatever it might be. It's getting people to work together. Yeah.
Okay. Seems like a lot of those two are about making the ocean relevant for people. They get that there's a whole world there that they may not see, but that is going on even as it does in the terrestrial biome we all live in. What you don't know about my background is that long before it was the stuff of TV shows, trying to earn enough money to get through another year of college, I spent a year up in Alaska fishing for king crabs. So I immediately noticed that gear. And what Ed said about the crab pots, we had the unfortunate incidents where they would fall on a guy and a human, and it was definitely it made for a lousy day. And ultimately, the idea that they bring that gear with them that many thousands of miles and all that line and the drag, and it's just amazing that they can actually do it. The question here is, have you noticed any differences in the types of gear or marine debris? I think you touched on this, but especially as it relates to Hawaii whales versus those in places like New England or even the West Coast. Any difference?
Yeah, well, if we step back and we compare it to East Coast versus West Coast, I noticed right away the gear on the West Coast was much heavier gear than, say, I had to deal with on the East Coast. I've been helping Stormy Mayo and Dave Matilla and up at Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, and the gear there was, a lot of times, got up to maybe 5/8 inch, but in Hawaii, we were seeing this 1-inch line, which was mainly from that industry, from Alaska, from the Bering Sea, because of the sea states and everything they had to deal with there. That's one aspect. And another difference, I really only touched upon this, was that gill net that I was mentioning. The difference is that we weren't seeing the gill net in Hawaii. And what did that mean? Did that mean it was so fatal they weren't coming with it? I think that's part of it. Or was it that sometimes they blew through it and they only took a little gill net with them, and that ripped free or was so invisible that by the time they made it to Hawaii, we never noticed it. So it could be either one. We're going to figure that out. I think it might be a little bit of both.
Here we have to have a storytelling moment, although you gave us a few good ones. Maybe we already saw the scariest, but somebody wants to know, what is your scariest moment during a whale disentanglement or rescue?
There's a couple of them.
I can imagine. I saw the video.
Yep. It's funny, the video the video never works when something really kind of goes wrong, or we don't want it to work.
It's probably a good thing.
Yeah. The first whale that Dave Matilla and I cut free in Hawaii was a yearling with its mother, and we had already thrown the grapple. We were hooked on, and they were behaving, we thought, normally. They come up and take a couple breaths, and they go back down, and we've been on them for about an hour or so, and trying to slow them down, keep them at the surface. And we were about halfway up the line, try to get closer to the animal over time and get those buoys right behind the animal. And we don't know what happened, but that behavior changed. We don't know if a shark came into play or something, but they went from doing 2 knots, it's like a couple miles per hour, to about 10 miles per hour. Again, that's a lot of difference. And it happened so fast that I went to push it, the line was getting tight, and we had a buoy on the end behind us. And so you had a whale on one end, a big buoy drag on the other end. I tried to push that line off the bow of this little inflatable we were in, did not make it. And it got so tight that it actually kicked me right off my feet and pinched me to the sponson, the rubber of the boat, which is another reason why we use rubber boats rather than a hard gunnel of say, fiberglass boat. I would have broken every rib on that side of my body. So I landed, it pinched me, and the line's running, and it was giving me rope burns across my face. My ear recovered, but it was all crinkly for a while. And then it hit David, it knocked David down, and we both rolled out of it. We both cleared the outboard, but that was kind of scary. And what if we had left gear behind us? That was the scary part of it. That grapple coming, that carabiner coming at us. So that was a scary moment. We learned an important lesson. Never have gear behind you, always in front of you.
Yep. Wow. Tales from the Nantucket sleigh ride. That's just amazing. Well, and to that end then, how have your disentanglement techniques changed and presumably improved over the years?
If you look at the early days, people weren't wearing PFDs, there was no helmets involved. Now we have all this safety gear. It's very good. The helmets, by the way, are not if the whale hits you. If the whale hits you in the head, helmet isn't going to do anything. But the poles that we use to reach out and cut the whale free, if they don't cut right away, they're an extension of the whale. So that might come along and hit you in the head, and the helmet might help. Gloves for working on the lines and things like that. But in the bigger picture, our tools have improved, and we've tried to go high tech too. But we've learned a lesson, and that is sometimes we've tried to design what we call the Siamid knife. Siamids are little like whale lice, okay, little crab-like animals that live on whales and they hold on. And this knife was supposed to walk its way up the line and then cut, things like that, kind of fancy stuff. And in the end, these pneumatic circular saws and things like that tend not to work. But let me give you one example that's thinking outside the box, and that is a turkey beheader for bow hunters here. I didn't come up with this idea, but this is definitely a good one in a sense. It is an arrowhead that you'd put on your bow or on a arrow to cut the head of a turkey off. And I guess you're making it a little more challenging, okay? It's called the gobbler guillotine. And we have used those in cases where we cannot get to that line that's wrapped maybe forward in the body, and you got a big whale, and we come up with a crossbow beside the whale, and we've nicked lines wrapping a whale and been able to free a whale 3 cases now using the gobbler guillotine. And if that ain't thinking outside the box, so I have to give Scott Landry credit on that one, but that is definitely outside the box.
Ingenuity wins again. Well, this leads to a few. We got some great questions here. Boy, I wish we could stay for an hour and do this, but we can't. But here's this person asks, what happens to the gear that's successfully removed from the animals? Are you ever able to pick it up, dispose of it, study it to find out more about what causes these things, etc.?
Definitely, it is very important to do that. If we can, we always try to recover the gear, we save it, or if we've documented it fairly well, and if it's in good shape, we'll give it back. Let's say it's fishing gear. We'll give it back to the fishermen. I've shipped gear back to Alaska.
Wow.
Once I know everything about it, and the fishermen are very cooperative here, by the way. They'll answer the questions. They don't want to catch whales, so they give us all that information. I know there's gear. If you go to Wrangell, Alaska, the guy's got it on his garage door, and it says "Been to Hawaii and back." He can't fish it anymore. But we save it. We learn as much as we can about it, trying to figure out everything. Where it came from, how was it set, what part of the gear, and trying to get just that little bit of information that will put it all the puzzle together. And it might reduce, it's probably not going to avoid or prevent it entirely, but at least reduce the threat. So we're getting there.
Well, so then we might, where'd it go here? We've got somebody here who says, and we have an adventurous person in the audience, and he or she is saying, do you have any volunteer opportunities available to assist with large whale disentanglements?
This is the one I wish I could get people more involved, because this is what, again, I mentioned earlier, the sanctuary program is very much into getting people involved. And it's a place where I can't do as much. My hands are somewhat tied because of the dangers involved. But we do. As much as I can, there are many roles to play. It's not about everyone jumping in a rubber boat and wielding a knife and trying to cut the whale free. There's many roles like a note taker, documenters, safety people, and there's roles back on shore too. Outreach education, our volunteers, God bless them. And, we do trainings with them, not because I'm probably going to have them wield a knife, but because having that training lets them inform the public so much better. So,
a couple about the whales. First is, while the whale might not at first know what you're doing, do they ever figure out that you're trying to help? Do they ever figure out what you're doing and then try to help you?
That's another good question, John. Sometimes it seems like that way. We've had several cases now where I've had to scratch my head and gone, did that whale do that to help me, kind of thing? And the scientist part of me or the responder side of me goes, boy, Ed, check your emotions. Don't assume that, But I'll give you one example. I wish I had shown it on the videos, but we had a whale back in 2007, humpback whale, anchored in gear, and we pulled up, and we had kind of grappled underneath of it. It was pot gear, local crab pot gear, and we got a hold of it. We pulled up, and when we pulled up, the entanglement was around its right flipper. It would lift that flipper out of the water, almost like saying, okay, here you are, guys, right there. And we're like, wow, that's perfect. Let's go get the knife right away. If it does that again, we're going to cut this whale free right away. And it did it again. And it just lifted the pecked up flipper, and it's entangled right here. And we just were able to cut right there, and the whale was free. It swam off a couple minutes later. So that's one example of where you think, well, maybe they do know we're here to help them out.
Well, this is akin to the video that went around not so long ago of the dolphin who found the divers, and unless somebody did an elaborate Photoshop job, it looks like he stuck around and let them cut that fishing line off of his, I think it was his peduncle or his flukes.
Totally agree. That's definitely one case where I don't have another explanation. I think the dolphin was coming for help.
Makes sense. Even though we do have to check our emotions at the door, even the scientist in all of us, I think, says, okay, all right, they're mindful. They know what's going on there. The other one is, well, this is from Jamie to Ed. Thank you, Jamie. Do you tag the whales that you rescue beyond the rescue, and would you be able to track their travels and ages when you do so?
I think we haven't yet, Jamie, but we're looking into it, I think, because so far our tagging has been to get back to the animal to finish the job. So we're tethering or grabbing a hold of the entanglement, and once the entanglement's gone, once we've cut it free, we haven't retagged. Look, one, there's the attachment point's gone. We use suction cup tags for research, but suction cup tags don't stay on very long. The tag we need is an implantable tag. And because the whale has been compromised, it's been dragging gear behind it, and it's thin maybe already, we've shied away from shooting a transmitter into the whale's body. But technology is advancing, and these tags are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We've got to keep our eye on it, because maybe they will make the transmitter small enough that we'll feel comfortable enough, shooting a small transmitter package into the blubber of a whale, the adipose, the fat tissue, and then we'll be able to track the whale beyond. Because right now our tracking is by eye. I will notify all the whale researchers and the tour boat operators, here's the fingerprint, the fluke of a humpback whale we've cut free. Everyone be on the lookout for that animal. And a lot of times that works for us. That's sort of a tag, in a sense. The whale's fluke, the big fingerprint of a humpback whale.
Well, and a lot of these are migratory. They're going up and coming back. And so, what was it? Was it hula hoop or?
It was
hooper?
hula hoop. Lahaina, one side of Maui was calling it hula hoop. The other side of Maui was calling it ringer. So
Ringer, that was it. But you'll always be able to spot ringer. This person, great question this person's asked. They're all great, but this is an interesting one. Based on your experience, are there any fisheries regulations that could be enacted to help reduce large whale interactions with marine debris or fisheries gear?
Yeah, there's some big ones. There's, the effort started back here on the East Coast. I mentioned Stormy Mayo and David Matilla, and John Lean is another one up in Newfoundland, Canada. And with the effort here, we're a little more further along. And the right whales, North Atlantic right whales, there's been more emphasis on doing gear modifications, changing fishing practices. And one example I'll give you is sinking line. I had a job previous to working in Hawaii that was making a better sinking line. It was not as dramatic as cutting whales free. It was building having manufacturers provide me new lines that was sinking lines that would lay on the bottom and not in the water column. And I had to test them for strength, because fishermen said when they're laying on the bottom, they get sand in them and they wear out quicker, and they cost more money too, so they better last. And I had to splice them up and run them on a machine. It was the most boring job in the world, but it was really important. And part of that, and again, many other people involved, I'm not taking credit for this, but that was part of the testing process to get sinking lines out there. And once you found a better sinking line, the NOAA Fisheries, a regulatory agency, says, thou shall use sinking line in these areas, on the Northeast at least.
That's that polypropylene line, the float line, that's some rough stuff too. So anybody that's handled different kinds of line, nylon and Dacron and the poly, it's the most abrasive, I think, that there still is, right? So that's, it hurts our hands, it hurts their bodies, it's rough stuff, literally.
Yep.
Time for a couple more. We've got lots of great questions here, though, but I think I've picked out a couple here that, well, first of all, this person, I think we can answer this one pretty quickly, but what would you say to someone who thinks that, quote, injured and entangled animals should not be rescued and we should just let nature take its course, unquote?
Boy, that's a tough one. I mean, it's just hard to. There's some in Hawaii. There are some cultural aspects that come to bear here, because some of the Hawaiian culture says do not let the animal be, and yet we find it very hard. We've made some compromises, but in the end, I don't know how to. We feel like we've got to respond. There are times I will say that when we think an animal will not make it, that even by cutting it free, it's soon going to die, and we know it. Somehow there's enough indicators we know. I do wish, and we've had meetings on this, there would be a way to humanely put that animal down, and rather than just let it linger on for months at a time. And we haven't come, it's the controlled environment kind of thing that comes into play, and we don't have a means of doing that yet. So as far as not responding, I feel like we have to respond, yeah.
Well, the other thing is if we're thinking about natural selection and let nature take its course, nature didn't put the polypropylene line there in the first place, right?
It's good point, John. It's, yep,
We
exactly.
create the problem, it's kind of up to us to
Exactly.
have to solve it, I
Yep.
guess, yeah. Okay, two more, and then we'll wrap up, I think. Have you noticed any changes in humpback whale populations or behavior over the years in working so closely with them?
Well, the numbers are definitely climbing. Obviously, now I'm in Hawaii, so I'm more focused there. Each and every year, we're seeing more and more whales. And a behavior, I'll give you one example, one good one, and that is they call it mugging in Hawaii, the whale watch boats. The whales are becoming friendlier, and they approach the boats. You can also call it a close approach, but they're mugging for the boat, and they're swimming around. They can respond to the people that are yelling and screaming on the boat. So we're getting more close approaches or mugging. So I think they're getting to a point where they're getting used to us. I think many boats, they don't perceive as a threat. So on the ship strike threat side of things, many of them don't perceive that. I think many operators are safe operators as well.
Yeah, that's really a great important thing. So that's mugging for the camera, not mugging us. Yeah, no. Okay. But here in Baltimore, we check that carefully. Saying. Last one here, and this is a great one to end on, I think. With such concern about entanglements and as dangerous as they are for marine mammal welfare, do you think it's the greatest threat they face, or if not, what are other threats to whales and other marine mammals that they face?
Well, there's a long list. If we sort of focus on the large whales, which we've done tonight, the two big ones, anthropogenic, the human-caused ones, are the entanglement threat and the ship strike threat. Those are the two big ones that we are aware of for many species of large whales. And again, maybe David Wiley will speak to right whales and the ship strike threat that Stellwagen Bank Natural Marine Sanctuary is working very closely with.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting when you think about ship strike. It's the whale sharks down in Yucatan. There's been some good ideas launched. I think a plan developed off of Yucatan where they have the aggregation there, and they've put out these marker buoys now to redirect ship traffic during their aggregation seasons. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Ed, for an incredibly interesting conversation and presentation. And I think I can probably speak for everybody in the room in saying we are very grateful for what you guys do there. Thank you.